Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Circle of the World podcast, where we discuss Joe Abercrombie's First Law series. I am one of your hosts, Chamberlain Jeffrey, and here are my co-hosts.
George, the Arch Lector.
And Harrison, the Adeptus Historical.
As you all know, we're covering The Blade itself, the first book in the original trilogy. Today we'll be covering The Course of True Love, How Dogs Are Trained, and Tea and Vengeance on this episode. So let's get started. First off, I think we should collectively just thank everybody for all your support. It has been surprising and humbling, and I don't know how to feel about my voice being on a radio or on headphones that other people are listening for their own entertainment. So
I mean, I like it.
Yeah.
You're just being coy, Jeff.
I'm humble bragging basically at this point.
Yeah, seriously though, we only thought like maybe a couple dozen people would maybe listen to us, and there's a lot more, so we appreciate it.
And all the positive comments and everything and all the suggestions are just fantastic, and we really didn't expect this many people to come back and just be this, invested all so quickly, which is just incredible. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, and also I want to apologize for any editing issues, especially with the third episode. I am going to be improving that. We are setting up a whole new system. By whole new system, I mean George is helping out. So
I got a new microphone.
Yes, he has a new microphone.
We're like Joe Rogan podcast now.
Yeah, right. And George has a new microphone. So hopefully he sounds better. Obviously, he's got to get used to the positioning and all that. But hopefully we're just going to be improving the quality of this podcast overall for all of you. And hopefully you guys just enjoy it. So I think we should move on to our first chapter read through. And this chapter is The Course of True Love. This is where Giselle wakes up one morning and is just pondering.
He's just had enough, isn't he?
Yeah, he's just had enough with fencing. He's just exhausted with it. And then he thinks he's going to beat Lord Marshal Varuz to training. He thinks he woke up early enough. Then he sees a silhouette and he's like, shit, Varuz is here this early? Fuck. As he gets closer, he realizes it isn't Lord Marshal Varuz. To his horror, it isn't Lord Marshal Varuz. It is our boy, Glokta. Who wants to discuss about what happens after Giselle makes that terrifying discovery?
And so we obviously know this is coming because Varuz asked Glokta to do this in a previous chapter, but Giselle has no idea. So yeah, when it surprises him, and he's just absolutely shocked, and we get another great description of Glokta's revolting gap-toothed grin. which
I wonder, is it actually that revolting? You know what I mean? Like.
Well, that's two characters now that think it's revolting. So
that's true. It's true. He is objectively revolting. I'm trying to imagine a real person in real life. You looking at them and you thinking, "Wow, that's revolting." I don't know. Can't think of anybody, but I guess it's a good sign.
So the point of this conversation that Glokta is going to have with Giselle is, well, he's adhering to what. He's following up on his promise to Varuz that he will talk to Giselle. But in actuality, he isn't really giving him a motivational speech. He's, in a way, he's kind of shaming Giselle. That's what I think.
Well, genuinely, and he definitely gets a little bit of enjoyment out of this.
Or
yeah, maybe a little bit, maybe a lot. Who knows? Because he doesn't want to be there. We know that. And he's just taken this opportunity to, have a bit of authority over Giselle. And just torture him a little bit, maybe.
I actually like how Giselle is like, okay, you want to go, Glokta? Like in his head, like word-wise. And then he realizes that he's completely outclassed. And he attributes it to him not playing cards in a while. But really, it's just Glokta's way smarter than him and doesn't care about feelings and all that. So he just completely outwords him, I guess, outwits him.
And I like that sort of parallel between a fencing match and, this conversation. He literally, or even the card games, there's a give and take to it, and a sportsmanship to it.
Yeah, it kind of plays into how he thinks everything is like a game.
Exactly.
And then he learns that there are levels to this, that Glocta, even in his crippled form, is leagues above what Giselle can bring to the table. Our boy Giselle is not the hot shit that he thinks
Even in
he
my
is.
crippled form, I can crush you.
Now, I understood that reference for Dragon Ball Z. I got it. Wait, was that a Dragon Ball Z reference, Harrison?
Was it, Jeff?
All right, we're going to have to figure this out later. I do not have time to be reminded of my age today. And then, so Glocta basically has Giselle confront the reasoning of his wanting to be in the contest. And Giselle can't come up with one. He really can't. At first, he thinks about it. He uses the tried and true excuse of honor. Then he does it for his father. In reality, Glocta cuts right down to it, which is he's doing it for himself. But he doesn't really want it enough for himself, which is why he's always whinging, whining, as George would say, whinging. And it makes Giselle question everything. Like after the conversation, as he's walking around and before he bumps into Yoru, he can't get it off his mind, as he says.
Well, because Giselle isn't, like we talked about before, he's not an idiot. He just is so naive and, out of touch that whenever he's actually confronted with self-reflection, he's like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Is this a waste of time? And he kind of comes to that conclusion. And then he tries to, the whole time too, he's like, oh, Glocta, you don't know me and blah, blah, blah. And Glocta's like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you how it is, buddy. What do you guys think?
And I love how impotent Giselle is here, but he kind of does know it because he makes that decision at one point to just stop answering and just listen to what he has to say. But he's not doing it because he wants to listen. He's doing it so that he can figure out some way to come out on top.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's kind of like a fencing match back and forth, and Glocta definitely wins it.
For
and
sure.
Of course, this is pushing him further and further into giving up more than anything, which I'm sure Glocta would love.
Yeah, he did this on purpose to circumvent Varuz's original request. He doesn't give a shit what Varuz wants.
Yeah, he wouldn't have done it if he was actually doing it for Varuz.
Exactly,
yeah.
What were you going to say, Harrison? You said, what do you guys think about what?
Oh, I was going to say, what do you guys think? Why do you think he had this talk? But we just covered that just now. So.
Oh, okay. All right.
I preemptively answered your question.
Exactly. You read my mind.
Glocta will get out of bed early just to shit on someone's day.
Yeah, it's actually quite impressive. The fact that he got up that early, because he got there before even Varuz was supposed to be there, and it's still like dark outside.
Yeah, so Glocta, he must have shit the bed that one, and he still got up and went to go see Giselle. So props to Glocta. He's committed to the cause. I'm happy for him.
So then he.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, then he, starts going about his day. He can't get it off his mind, and we have a character come up. A character we've met before as an audience, but Giselle's never seen before. Character by the name of Yoru Sulfur. And he's like, Captain Luthor. Damn it, the Ladislav voice.
Luthor. Okay, continue, Harrison. You were on a roll. Don't let me stop you.
And he's like, oh, you're training and everything. And Giselle basically says, you know what? I'm thinking about giving it up. And Yoru is like horrified. He's like, no, what the heck? No, my master would hate that. You can't do that. You have to do it. And Giselle's like, dude, I don't even know you, bro. Get out of my business.
I love this line of he starts looking around so that he can alert someone to the madman that's just wandering around out here.
He's like, what is he doing up so early? What the hell?
Obviously, we know now, but to Giselle, this must just be like a complete. It's just absolute mindfuck, isn't it? This guy you've never met before, you've never seen him anywhere, doesn't fit in, and he knows your name, and he's really scared that you're going to give up, and it's just what you've been thinking about, and it's like
he's talking about his master.
There's a madman on the loose out here.
He's like, we always act like Giselle was overreacting, but to be honest, he's acting like anybody would. He'd be like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Absolutely. What else happened? So then he just gets pissed. He feels like everyone's just having a hand in his own business today. He's just fed up with everyone. Then he goes to Major West's, should we say apartment, condo, bungalow?
He's going to his
Quarters.
quarters. Yeah, I
his
think
quarters, his barracks.
It's funny too because he's going to him because he's wanting sympathy. He's wanting somebody to be like, "Oh, you poor baby," basically.
And he wants to manipulate West into breaking the news to Varuz that he's quitting the contest. West isn't gonna do this shit. Anyone that knows West by this point, he doesn't give a fuck. Just the previous chapter, didn't West say to Giselle, there are more important things than what's going on in your life?
Yeah, although I don't know. He probably would have told him to go tell him himself, but still.
Mm-hmm.
But he does not get sympathy in West's quarters.
No,
RD
he doesn't.
is not happy.
No, George, let's get your viewpoint on this exchange here.
Well, I think it does show for a little bit of RD's character because she does not give a shit what people think at this point. She's just bored and she's lonely and nobody talks to her except for this one spoiled brat who thinks he's, God's gift. And she just gives him a piece of her fucking mind, and I just think it's fantastic. And he's just gobsmacked, isn't he? He's just like, how dare you?
He's like, she should have been honored to even be noticed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. Because at first he, was happy to see her because obviously, as we can tell, he's falling in love. Our boy's falling in love. Our little brat, and he's just like, oh, this girl cares about me, or at least, he doesn't even think that. I don't know if he thinks that, but we know that he cares for her. He might be somewhat of a masochist. He might like being degraded.
Oh,
right.
Well, we'll get
he clearly doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, earlier, prior to all this, when she was just insulting him in a comedic way, whereas what happened here, there was
just full on like you're a spoiled brat.
Yeah, there was all ill will. And but before, I want to point out something that George mentioned something. You mentioned that she makes fun of fantasy in this case.
Yeah, she just walks in and here's a book of is it the Fall of the it's the Fall of the Master Maker, which we'll find out more about later. And it's just wise wizards and gallant princes and busty maidens and all that, which is obviously part of the thing that Joe is doing here to try and take the piss out of, or in some sense maybe an homage you could call to traditional fantasy.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there is a certain level of, because we find out some stuff about it later, and so I think there's a certain level of how much of the history is true and how much of it is embellished. And she's talking about how ridiculous it is, but to a certain degree, some of it is true, right? And I just think that's interesting. It's very realistic how he kind of inserts that in there whenever there's tons of like little myths that we have, which to a certain degree, some of them might be true, but they're probably over embellished, been retold so many times we don't actually know what happened.
That's a good point, Harrison. I like that.
Yeah, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, look at that. The Adeptus Historical bringing different perspectives all the time. That's why we hired him and pay him nothing.
Yes, I'm an intern.
Where's my coffee? Harrison, where's my coffee?
I'm sick. I'm 5 hours away. No, sorry. How far is that from you? Like 12-hour plane flight or something? 7-hour?
You're probably a 12-hour drive for me.
Yeah, I'm a 12-hour
drive. 12-hour drive. So basically, after he confesses to Artie that he's thinking about dropping out of the contest, the first thing she does, before she even like really shits on him, she shits on him. She says she sells. Anyway, she shat on him by laughing because admitting to him that her and West had a bet if he would actually stick it through to the contest. That's gotta hurt worse, I think, than the other shit she said, because that indicates a level of contempt that you're the Like he's the
butt of
subject of
somebody's
people's
joke.
bets. Yeah, the butt of somebody's joke. I thought that
Yeah.
was interesting.
Oh, exactly. And then we get to the point where, you know, she says that he should go back to sucking on his mother's tit. And he says, "Oh, but you know, my mum's dead." And he thinks, "Ha, got her now." And she's just like,
Yeah.
"Fucking, who gives a shit? She's lucky."
Yeah. 'Cause we-
Oh,
and
how
I
rough
feel
is
like we
that?
we all know a person that would say something like that in order to incur sympathy or an apology. And the fact that it's thrown in his face, it is sublime. Love it.
Yeah, that little thing that she says, I don't remember the exact line, where she basically talks about how rich people act. Like, oh, my life's so hard, and they have everything they could ever want, and then one thing doesn't go their way, and it's the end of the world.
Mhm.
You know, it's not 100% accurate, of course, but like I think it's a common thing that happens with people. You know, they have
Oh, for
everything
sure.
they want, and then one thing goes bad, and suddenly it's the end of the world.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, she says you get everything you could possibly want, then throw a tantrum because you had to pick it up yourself. You're pathetic. You make me fucking sick.
That's better. It's closer, I think.
I am
get in there, Jeff.
improving. I am improving my
Me
British
fucking
accents
sick.
and the variety of them. It's a weekly improvement, but I promise you, I will get there.
And I also like how Pacey has a certain like drunkenness to Artie's voice whenever he's
Oh
doing her
yeah,
line.
because she's drunk at 10 a.m. It's mimosa hour for her.
God, and you would be
So
as well if you didn't have anything to do and everyone hated you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks. Go ahead, Harrison. I feel like you're about to say something.
No, I was just gonna continue on. I don't want to rush you.
No, I'm not rushing. I'm good.
I was just gonna say, and by the end of this conversation he has with her,
Mhm.
just kind of like how Galactor went to talk to Giselle for the opposite reason of what Varuz wanted. Giselle went to talk to Artie, got the opposite of what he wanted, and whenever Artie had her reaction, you
Right.
know, Artie got the opposite of what she was expecting, which is by the end of it, Giselle basically says, "You know what? Fuck all these people. I'm gonna do it just because I can."
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, that's one of my notes. That it took Artie to shame him into taking fencing seriously.
And
Like-
that really does ring true, because shame is like a very powerful motivation for a lot of people.
That is very true, and I feel like people they don't accept shame anymore. Shame is not in vogue. Shame needs to come back.
Hashtag
All right.
make shame great again.
That's going to be a Circle of the World podcast exclusive hashtag. Make shame great again. That's what we're doing.
Exactly 10 minutes before we get cancelled.
Yeah.
Listen, we're not getting paid for this, so we can say whatever we want.
You can't stop us. You won't find us.
Yeah, all you know is that we're all 12-hour drives away from each other. Ha!
Exactly.
At
Very
least.
free drive.
Well, if you think...
Don't give it
Harrison,
away.
All right, you're right. I'm not going to give it away. I'm going to at least protect George, if not us. Okay. So I want to rate the chapter already, but I also want to bring a couple notes that I'll bring them up while I rate the chapter. How about that?
Yeah, go for it.
That works. Okay. So for this one, I haven't done it yet. I think I'm going to do it now. I think I'm going to go for a 9 out of 9 fingers.
You mad?
I'm doing it 9 out of 9.
You love this chapter that much, Jeff?
I love when Giselle's world gets crushed. In all seriousness, because I'm not really giving it a 9 out of 9. I'm holding on to that. That's in the back pocket.
You bamboozled us.
I did. I pulled the rug out from under you guys. Sorry. 7 out of 9, for real.
I was going to say I agree with you there.
Oh,
But I was going to say an 8 and a knuckle. Out of 9.
8 and a knuckle? Okay. No.
I think this is like the first hint we get of things aren't going to be the way that they seem to be, or the way that, you know, traditional storytelling would kind of suggest that they're going to work out. If you know what I mean, because up till now, like, the romance has been quite between RD and Giselle. You know, it's been quite traditional. You know, she's not interested, he likes her, or, you know, he doesn't know that, but, you know, he finds her attractive, and then we think things are going to work out, but they just absolutely don't, or at least not so far.
All right, that's good. The reason I like it, I really do. I really just wanted to hype it up, so I apologize for that. But
You fucking ruined my score, Jeff.
as Giselle's world was crushed, so was George's. I'm so sorry, George. I didn't mean to do that to you.
Art imitates life, or life imitates art.
Well, the reason what I liked about it was Glocta's speech to Giselle. If you think about it, there's like a nice juxtaposition of their current, like where they're at in their current state in life, and also like where Glocta was. Glocta, by all accounts and purposes, was just as vain, pompous, and arrogant as Giselle is. But I think he even said it earlier on in this book. He earned it at least. Like he never whinged, or I guess we don't know if he'd never whinged, but he never thought about quitting the contest, as far as we can tell. So
he loved fencing. Yeah,
he loved it. He loved it. And the other thing I liked about here, which I don't want to get too into because I don't want to do any spoilers, but Yoru's conversation with Giselle was there was definitely foreshadowing there, especially with the comment about the commoners. If you remember that, like, nobility doesn't matter. It's about the commoners because they decide.
Commoners decide in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
I do appreciate how with that scene with Yoru being there is how he is kind of alluding to things, and as a reader, you're like, why does he know these things? How does he know Giselle? Why is he talking like this? He mentions that Baez is his master first thing, so you're like, Baez, what the hell? And I just like how subtle everything is there.
Yeah, and we should remember that Yoru has shown the ability to be aware or knowledgeable of things he probably shouldn't be. As of like, remember when he knew what West was thinking due to the heat of the Lord's Round? Was it the Lord's Round or was it the other? What was the chamber?
That special chamber that they've got for the
chamber. Yeah, it was the Lord Chamberlain's Chamberlain.
Yeah, you're right.
It was the Lord Chamberlain's chamber. Okay, got it. That's a tongue
You're right,
twister.
because he makes the comment about the clattering to the ground like a cupboard full of saucepans.
Yeah.
And that is interesting.
So, yeah, at this point, this is the second time we meet Yoru. If he's not a swindler, that's obvious. So we know that there's more to him than
meets the eye.
Thank you, Harrison. Finish
Is it the green one or the blue one, though?
I did not think we were there yet, but I'm glad we are. And the last note I had was something I noticed: Artie's boredom. It's like, I get it. It reminds me of, like, so as someone on the East Coast, someone that left their Midwestern town to move to New York to pursue some career in, I don't know, fashion, whatever, and they're isolated, and it's got to be a very difficult, how do I say, relocation period, a growing period.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. I think, honestly, she does say it here too, is how she was expecting to come here and, spend time with her brother, and her brother doesn't even give her, a few. He barely speaks to her.
Yeah.
And she is, what else is she supposed to do? She's not nobility. She can't hang out with the nobles. She is bored probably by hanging out with anybody of a lower station because she's pretty smart. And what else does she have to do? She just sits there. Like George said, the only person that comes and sees her or spends time with her is some spoiled brat. So,
but she'll take it because a spoiled brat. Here's the thing about Artie. I love her character, but as we go on further on, she isn't. You know what? I'm trying to think what to say without spilling some shit. I don't think, like, if Artie wouldn't talk. You said, like, if a person that would like to talk to her is a lower station, she wouldn't be interested in communicating with this person. Do you know what I mean?
I don't think it's not that she wouldn't be interested. She'd probably just treat him like everybody else. She doesn't really see class It's more like, sorry, my point is that like she's not allowed to by society to hang out with nobility, and she
Right.
already is bored by other people.
Right.
So-
I get that. I also get the sense though that on her part there's a huge desire to be in the center of things, in the center of the things that are happening, the cultural shifts, the new trends. She wants to be part of that for sure.
That's interesting. I always kind of saw it as, she's always been alone on some level, and this is just another disappointment coming here, and now she can't go back. And what else is she supposed to do?
That's right. Yeah, that's true, because she was probably so excited to see her brother, and like you said, and he doesn't have the time for her. So I get that. I think I just resent Artie for some stuff that happens way later on in the books, and I need to let go.
That's interesting. So to me, every character, and this is why Joe's writing is so good, is that anytime you put yourself into somebody else's shoes and understand why they make their decisions, that's whenever I'm like, that character is awesome. And Artie is a really good representation of that. The more you get to know her character, the more you're like, actually, I can't really blame her.
Yeah, it's a difficult journey for me as a reader. George, you were saying?
I mean, I don't feel anything but sorry for RD throughout the entire everything. You just can't feel anything, but she's obviously just a victim of, society at large.
Which,
let's not get deep here.
Yeah. That's a good parallel, though. I just saw something that you're talking about. So Jeff, your rating was 7?
Yes. That was a long tangent. I apologize, listeners. 7 out of 9 for me, and I'll shut the fuck up. Next up, George.
We already did that as well.
George is 8.5.
We did do George.
Sorry, damn it, 8 knuckle.
8 and a knuckle. Harrison.
I came up with it, all right. I'm allowed to mess it up once.
You can. You're fine. You're fine. I'm saying, Harrison, did you score it? Am I?
No, I did not. So
okay,
mine is going to be 8 out of 9 fingers, because I'm not going to drag it on too long here, but I just like that in this chapter we get to see Giselle kind of get put in his place, but more importantly, we get to see as we see it, Giselle also sees how everybody else views him. Like we see how we kind of, in a certain way, we see how Veru sees him through what Glockter's saying. He sees how Glockter sees him, and most importantly, we see how Artie sees him, and a little bit of how West sees him too, because West was the other side of the bet. So the fact that he even bet on him, he bet on him doing it, but still. And it's satisfying, but I like because we get to see how everybody else sees him, and it's really good for his character.
Good for his character. Terrible for his self-esteem. All right. Well, those are our ratings. Nice. We should bring up, starting this week, ladies and gentlemen, users of Reddit or social media, we will be doing question of the week. So please feel free to contact us via our various social media accounts or our email account, which is, George, what is that again?
It's Circle of the World podcast at gmail.com.
Got it. Okay, so you can email us there with a question if you feel so inclined, and
that's any question, anything you want to hear discussed. You just ask us. We might talk about it. We might not. We might talk about it because it's crazy. You never know.
Yeah, and we'd like to say we're trying to keep out of spoilers. So if you give us a question, the only pretense is that it kind of be congruent with it non being spoilery. Now, of course, as we get later on, you can ask us more spoilery questions, but we're trying to stick with the story here. So,
yes, and I believe we're going to be posting a thread like 2 days prior to the next recording. George, is that correct, for questions of the week?
We're going to put a quick text post up on the First Law and our House of the Meme Maker, who, by the way, have we've been in correspondence with, and they're a bunch of lovely guys as well. So if you haven't already, go to the House of the Meme Maker and have a look at the lovely stuff they put up.
Yeah, so head on over there, and so send us questions, and then starting next recording, we will be taking questions and answering them on air for you, the listeners. So let's go to our second chapter read through, which is how dogs are trained. Let me say that again. How dogs are trained. There we go. What do you guys think about this one? I know I started off the last chapter, so what do you guys think?
I love how we start off with Frost being creepy again. Just kind of sitting there staring at the space, and I just think that's fantastic. This guy is, let's forget the whole family and the little pink diary. This guy just seems to be an absolute psychopath.
Yeah, he is. Absolutely. Like, he doesn't even move.
Yeah, how can he do that?
Yeah, it's been an hour? I think they said they've been waiting. So
Yeah,
for an hour.
Yeah, Glockta says he didn't notice him blink or he didn't notice him breathe.
Says hadn't shifted his feet, hadn't blinked, and hadn't breathed.
Is Frost a zombie? What the fuck is going on here?
I've got a theory because he's very pale as well.
Oh,
and I know
here we go.
albinos are a real thing, right?
Wait,
Obviously.
what was that last part?
And I said, I know that albinos are a real thing, obviously, in the real world. But I have a theory that Frost is part Shanka.
Hey, wait a minute.
Really?
Yeah. What do you think of that?
Well, like I said before, Glockta might be part Shanka as well. He has no self-preservation. So
that's true.
Maybe they're a perfect dynamic duo. Maybe they're like brothers. It's so stupid.
That's an anime twist if I've ever heard one. And it turns out that Frost is Glockta's brother.
And they're both part Shanka.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we never hear about Glockta's dad, so you never know.
I was just gonna say Severar's their dad. It's a family function over here, folks. So Harrison, continue. What
they're doing is they're waiting at the docks for their their target, who is about to be presumably leave the docks. So they're sitting there waiting, and somebody finally comes up there, the person they're looking for. And Glockter's super relieved because he's been standing for an hour and he doesn't like standing. Yeah. So they go up to the docks and everything, and Glockta kind of has a classic sort of halt in the name of the law.
And in Stephen Facey's voice, it is hilarious. In the name of His Majesty, but loud.
Yeah. And the guy, he's a mercer, has a guard, and the guard goes to protect his person, and he gets shot with a bolt. It's a flatbow bolt, and a flatbow is a crossbow. If anybody was wondering, whenever they talk about that, it's just a crossbow. But he calls it a flatbow because Joe says that apparently crossbows got their name from a like a cross, like Jesus Christ, a cross, to be, I'm using this weapon in the name of the God or whatever. So he says there's no God inside the first law, and there's no Jesus at least. So he just named it what anybody he thought would name it.
And I do find that interesting for some other things that come up as well. Like he calls almost every character calls arrows shafts, and I didn't know that was a very common thing for it.
Yeah, but it's also very common throughout other books that I've read as well.
Is it? Oh.
Yeah.
And then he does call this a bolt.
Yeah, that's true as well.
As someone that has a compound bow for hunting, I can attest to this. Yeah, shafts, bolts. Mm-hmm. True.
You like shafts, Jeff?
Oh, I do. Kidding. My girlfriend's gonna be like, "What the fuck?" So, Harrison, just to clarify, I think we do know the name of the person that Glockta is after here, though. Gordon, what's his? I don't even these names. Okay, Goffred, Hornlock,
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 which is probably the most ridiculous name that we've had yet.
And we've had some, and
I
we had
never
some
remember it,
ridiculous
guys.
ones.
I think Solomo Scandi is probably the best, but this is just.
They're very
There's another-
unique, but goddamn
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I know. There's another name for another character in another book at another time that I really do appreciate, but we won't talk. But you guys know who I'm talking about. Rat Sock Rerom.
Brilliant.
So it turns out the person who shot the flabo bolt was Severod, and he comes out of the shadows too. And they killed his guard, and the guy's like, "Oh, you can't do this, dock person." He was the captain of the ship. He's like, "Help me," and the captain's like, "Sorry, bub." He just doesn't. He does not care.
No.
And I love that. You just double tip. If you know that this guy's wanted, you can just go, or if they look dodgy or something, you just walk straight up to the Inquisition. It's like, oh, by the way, this guy's going to leave. If you want him, you can just pay us again.
Yeah.
This is a thing I brought up. This is one of my notes. I have to say, like, their spy network, the Inquisition spy network, has to be effective because if you think about it, a merchant traveling has got to be the norm. Maybe it's a little bit, sketchy that he's trying to travel in the dead of night, but other than that, it's not something to look twice at. So that means Glokta has people, or it could be just Severard, because Severard, I feel like he's the one that people will talk to, constantly unearthing or discovering this guy's leaving at this time. This guy wrote this. This guy said that. Their spy network has got to be pretty effective.
Oh, definitely, and I think it really speaks to sort of like the totalitarian nature of at least the society in Adua.
At least the Inquisition of itself, like that, definitely is totalitarian.
Oh yeah, and considering who we now know started it, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, true.
It's interesting. The Union keeps pretty good records of like who goes where, and merchant stuff, and the meetings and everything like that. They keep very good records, and so they always know where people live. You find out where somebody lives, and then you find out where they're going. And definitely, I'd agree that they have a good spy network. And I liked that the record keeping was kind of a part of that, because it was not long ago that they went to all those people's homes. You can't get a home in Adua without filling out the proper paperwork, which is why I think is a big part of why they're able to track people down.
Interesting. I like that. Yes, the record keeping is something that's overlooked. I didn't even think about that until you brought it up.
I think that really does develop the Union a lot more, because we know now, we've seen it before with the interviews for to see the Majesty and petition the King and all that. So we know that the Union is very, very bureaucratic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the government is absolutely ridiculous. There's secretaries and undersecretaries and this and that, and everybody has an assistant apparently, which is just a massive waste of manpower. But
manpower, taxes.
I thought that was just every government.
Yeah, it's every government.
Well, it's not quite like real life, is it? And
we don't. Governments nowadays don't have announcers. I guess.
I wish they did though.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Ours does.
You have an announcer
in Parliament. There's a man who says when people are going to speak, and he does it exactly like that. He goes,
Parliament recognizes.
Boris Johnson. Maybe not exactly like that. You know what I mean.
And then he interrupts everybody too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
He interrupts the interrupters. That's great.
Yeah, because you're basically in our government. You can't call someone a liar outright, and if you do, he just tells you to be quiet, basically.
Oh, really?
Be funny though.
Yeah.
I want to watch one of your government's sessions in action.
Oh, they record them all, so let's go and have a look.
Is it on the British version of C-SPAN?
No idea what that is.
Neither do I. Neither do I.
Again, showing my age here. I'm fucking tired of it. All right. Anyway, so basically, they black bag this guy. We know their MO. This is their modus operandi. We know what they're doing. They black bag him. They take him out. And what I like is when Glockta, right before we cut to the next part, Glockta, before he pays the captain, he goes, what happened tonight? What's the story you're gonna tell? Captain says what he wants to hear, and then he goes, good. That's how I want to hear it in Westport if you tell it. And the captain is like affronted. He's like,
that's what happened, Inquisitor.
like, what other story could I tell? So, and then when he says, always pleased to do His Majesty a favor, that means I feel like the Inquisition contacted him, or at least found out that Hornlock was trying to get a little voyage out of town, versus the captain taking the initiative on the double dipping, like you said, George.
I mean, that's definitely true. I mean, I'm sure the Inquisition has probably contacted this guy before for something very similar. If someone's fleeing the city, like Harrison said, in the dead of night, you might get offers like that quite often, and then the Inquisition is probably going to be interested quite often as well.
I feel like this is kind of one and done. I wonder if he booked it already, and then Glockta's pretty smart. He was like, "Who'd they book it with?" Oh, this sailor, and he's like, "Okay," and then he went and talked to him and said, "Hey, you should get and go with me, buddy." Gave him some money, and he was like, "Okay, that's a good deal." I don't know.
Yeah. And then, so he paid the captain. They went on their way, and then we transitioned to the torture room. The torture room under the house. The torture room under the house that Severard is currently renting out to the Inquisition. And George, do you want to pick up here?
Sure, and we get a so this is what our fourth torture scene in as many chapters. Again, we can't have a Glockta chapter without torture. That's just that is his modus operandi.
Right.
And he explains to Gottfried Hornlach, we know exactly what you've been doing. We know that you hired this Solomon Scandi to kill all these 10 people. So you're fucked, basically. So you just sign your name on this paper and we'll get right to it. And of course, Hornlach just immediately tries to bribe Glockta, which seems like, it's far too late for that.
It was far too late 9 years ago.
Oh, definitely.
When Glockta came back to the Union without half his functioning limbs or appendages, there's no bribing this guy.
And I love that line as well. You give him a bit of hope. You lean forward and you go, you know what I really want?
Yeah, exactly. Also, just to clarify, I think Solomon Scandi, you said Solomon Scandi. I think that was one of the victims. Carpi is the name of the assassin.
Carpi, that's it.
Carpi. Right? Is it just Carpi? There's no first name or last name?
No, I think that's all we get. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all we get. All right. He's not important anyway. What I like here is how Hornlock, he was caught, he was black bagged in the dead of night. He was basically caught trying to escape in the dead of night. And yet, when they're interrogating him, or like Glockta's starting to ask him questions, he's still trying to maintain an air of innocence. My guy, you were trying to leave your town in the middle of the night, like with the bodyguard. Come on, you look guilty.
Yeah, he and I like how Glockta doesn't even really do much torturing here. Not really. He's kind of just like, all right, this guy's pretty weak. He just needs a little bit of motivation, and then we get this cool little line where he's like, "My mom trained dogs," which is interesting. The fact that his mom was a dog trainer, but and then after he's talking about the dog, Severard leans in and goes, "Dogs."
Dogs. Is extremely intimidating, if someone whispers something in your ear like that.
Yeah, tied up. Don't they have him naked here too?
Yeah, absolutely.
They have them all naked.
Yeah.
And I do like how Glockta's record so far, he actually has to not torture someone as much as he does have to.
Oh, that's true.
All he needs is the suggestion and the fear.
Yeah.
And that's what makes him so good at his job.
But he's intimidating.
That's why he gets promoted so easily. The man is good. The man is good.
So he basically gets him to admit that yes, he has hired the assassin, and yes, and blah 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 blah. So he gets him to confess, And that's kind of where that ends off there.
Yeah, it looks like he's from the a first time reader's point of view. It looks like he's going to ask Hornlock repetitive questions that he wants the same answers to.
Yeah, exactly. Just like training, he's gonna
train them dogs.
So obviously he's gonna need him to repeat these things, and he's gonna have to get them right and not resist when the day comes.
Right.
Which is very important. You know, if you're gonna drag someone out in front of a council, then you're not gonna want them to just suddenly go, actually, no, you tortured me.
Right. You mitigate that risk. Right. Oh, another thing I wanted to point out about this chapter, it's got to be one hell of a city, right? If Severard kills that bodyguard on the bridge earlier and just tosses him into the water. So you have corpses just floating around in the water, blood on the bridges, and people, when they wake up and they start going about their day, somebody's going to run into that corpse and somebody's going to see that blood on that bridge. And it's not really an effort to actually try to clean up. So when Glockta says, clean that up, will ya? Severard's like, sure. And he just basically tosses the soda can over a bush. That's literally what he did.
Yeah, they literally find a body floating by the docks, don't they?
You know they do. So it's just got. It makes me think. I know it was said earlier that Adjua, or at least the Union, is set like late Renaissance era in terms of the people, the culture, but there's still a savagery to the general proceedings of the society.
I mean, life is cheap is a good motif here.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So many people have died already, and half of them, we didn't even know the names of, and half of them, like you say, just kind of get pushed to the side and left to bloat in the docks.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy, that bodyguard. Well, not that we need to linger on every single person who dies, as many more will. But that bodyguard was a person, and as Pacey gets better and better, not Pacey, sorry, Joe gets better and better at doing, showing how each person is a human being. That death doesn't mean much, but that guy could have had a family. Damn it.
Yeah. I think about that shit all the time. In a movie, in a book, somebody dies. I'm like, fuck, he probably had a family. Probably had a dog.
And I really think it's a real shame that Joe didn't come up with that, the shifting POV chapters that he does in the later. If he'd had that idea here, I think we'd have gotten so much more background and some interesting characters.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, the shifting background POVs and stuff, what we're talking about is basically where he goes from one point of view to another point of view on one chapter. It's not even super long, but it gets you enough of an idea to realize who the person is and their motivation, why they're there. And sometimes they die, sometimes they don't, and it does really, really good for world building and character, and like just making you realize that everybody's a person. But he doesn't do that until the heroes, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's when it debuts, is in the heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what would you guys rate this chapter at?
Oh, I think I definitely. We've, like you say, we've had this before. We've had this, the typical torture sequence, but I think Glockta, it's more of Glockta's character. You know what I mean? He just wants his old life back, and he doesn't care about anything except doing what he needs to do to. Well, we don't really know his motivations at this point, but
I don't even think he wants his old life back.
No, so I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 9 fingers.
Okay, yeah. Nice score. I like that. Harrison, just to correct you, he does say he wants his old life back. Remember when Hornlock is like, "What do you want?"
I want my
leg back. Oh, that's right. You're right. I want my teeth.
I want my leg.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of referring to the fact that he's always like, that person kind of isn't even there anymore.
Oh, yeah, the old Glockta died for sure. He's dead. He's dead and buried in Gurkle. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I will rate this chapter a 4 out of 9. I like it.
Jeff.
What happened?
Tell us why, Jeff.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay. You cut out. I apologize. Yeah, I like it. It's just, it's basically it's it's one prolonged interaction with the same guy, and not much happens. Like that. I like the idea that Glokta can basically get him to cooperate with the implied threat of torture, which is cool. But other than that, I feel like not much really happens. It's from the bridge to the room, and that's it.
Yeah, I'm actually on board with you there. My score is also 4 out of 9 because for the same reasons. It's obvious who we're in. We get Glocked and everything, but it's also just it's kind of the same thing that we've already seen, and it's good. It's written good. 4 doesn't mean it's bad. None of the chapters are bad. I don't think, but it's not super amazing or anything.
Right. Did we clarify that when we rate chapters, we're not necessarily saying like a 4 or a 3 means that the chapter is bad. It's just in relative to other chapters. That's how our rating goes.
Yeah, I think we mentioned that a couple times.
Okay, good. I don't want anyone to throw eggs at
Anytime
us.
we give like a load thing, anytime I've given a load thing, I'm always like, no, it doesn't mean it's bad. It's not bad.
I still like it. I just don't like it as the other ones.
Yeah, we definitely don't need people coming after us for disliking their favorite chapter. We need to nip that in the bud real quick.
Yeah. That's all right. Okay. So let's move on to, because Harrison, you gave us a score. George, you gave us a score. I gave the score. Now let's move on to best meme of the week.
George?
It happened again, guys.
How? God damn it, George!
Sorry.
It's all right, man. It's all right.
I'd be a shit arch lector. They just I'd be murdered like straight away.
It's okay. I would be. Anytime I don't know something that I should know as my role, I just go, what? I just blow it off. I'm like, oh yeah, that's my job, but I'm an old man. I don't know what you're talking
about. There you go.
Okay, so for our meme of the week, we have user Sir Spaceman -1 to thank, and we're going to put the link in the description, and it is spoiler, so click at your own peril.
Yeah, please be careful.
Okay, so now we will move on to our next and final chapter read through, which will be Tea and Vengeance. Harrison, you want to take this over?
Yeah, so the chapter kind of opens up with Logan and Baez and Malachus on the road. They are trying to head down south. They kind of, I don't think they mention it exactly right here, or they kind of do. It's not super important, but they're heading south. They're trying to get to Adjua, and Baez seems to be just happy as can be. He's enjoying the weather and everything. Logan's a bit more paranoid. He's looking around, looking at the ground, looking at where they can be ambushed. And Baez points out, what do you see in front of us? The ground. And Logan has this good moment where he talks about, this is good battleground. He wasn't as good as Three Trees was at picking the ground, but he can tell that this is pretty good fighting ground. If they can get ambushed from right there and whatnot, it kind of just shows that Logan knows what he's about when it comes to strategy. At least he knows what is good and maybe not what's bad. So I like that point just because it kind of shows that, again, more complexity to Logan, that he's not, just some fighter. He's not just some champion. He's got more brain power than that.
Right. He's not just a brute.
Yeah, and I think Baez even points it out too in this right here, as he even talks about how he's, he's always full of surprises. He's surprised that he knows.
That's a little later. That's a little later. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you a question, Harrison. You just said that Logan isn't as good at scouting the ground as Three Trees. Is that mentioned so far in this book? I don't remember. I know he said Three Trees is good at it, that they would talk tactics together, but the only one that I know he said that was like better at choosing ground is Bethod.
He does. He exactly mentions Bethod is amazing at it, but He does mention how 3 trees is good at the ground. I think maybe later on, whenever some pedantics happen.
And I do like this sort of departure from,
Mhm.
like you said, he's not just a brute. He's not just a fighter and a champion. He has this tactical mind, and he's constantly on edge because he's constantly thinking about, who's going to come after him, what's going to happen. He knows Bethel is coming, and he knows that he's pissed off. And like he says here, we should have just killed the 3 of them.
Yeah, very honest in that sense. Like, we had them in our grasp. We should have just murdered them. And
Which
go ahead, Harrison. What?
I was just gonna say, Logan's been talking about how he's gonna try to, he's like, oh, my past is behind me, but then he's like, we should have murdered them.
No, for sure. And one thing I like that George you mentioned, he admits that everything frightens him. Like that fear is plays a big part in his ability to survive. And that's very honest. And how do I say it? I don't think it subverts a trope or anything, but it plays against the idea that the hero has no fear. That's very, or I don't know if it is nowadays, because nowadays all art is always tearing down the grand narrative, blah 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 blah. But just kill the fly. But it goes against like prior movies, books, where you never get the sense that the protagonist is terrified. And
No,
Logan
absolutely.
out here outright admits he's always terrified. He's always near needing new underwear. Always. Just always.
Absolutely. And I think, like you say, that does kind of subvert the narrative, which in, the last 5 years or so has become very popular. But for 2005, this is coming a long way in terms of, breaking things up and really showing that these people, even though we might hide, put them up on pedestals and give them stereotypes or archetypes, that, they really are just people.
Right.
Has it been that's another thing that I love about Joe Abercrombie's writing.
Yeah, no, it's great. This book came out 2005?
Yeah.
Holy shit. Here I was thinking it wasn't that long ago.
But I think, we get a lot of parallels here between, and we probably not going to go on a big tangent, but we get, you have to be scared to be brave sort of thing from Game of Thrones. The very first few chapters in there. And obviously we know that Game of Thrones, in particular, the first book and second, because the third wasn't out yet, but finish the book, George.
No, the third came out in 2000. It was out by this time.
So we got the third book there, but
not the fourth.
We know that the Song of Fire and Ice is a big influence back then for Joe.
For sure. For sure. And then Harrison, I think you were continuing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they were just mentioned. I believe that Logan mentions how, the library, right? They're gonna come and burn the library or whatever. And Baez is not even bothered. He's like, no, it's the walls have the words of Juvens on them. If they go looking for it with negative and with the intention of burning it down, they're never gonna find it.
Yeah, that's a great image. Harrison, can you talk about the image he talks about?
Oh yeah, he's like, no, I don't remember it now because I was.
I'll tell you. But then, he's like, anyone that has violence in mind cannot come near. So he imagines Bethod's men are just wandering around the fucking lake. Like, where the fuck is this library? We should be able to.
He said it was right here.
Yeah, it's right here. He says,
we've
by
been
these
around this
stones,
300 times, and we can't find the fucking library.
We sent Steve, we sent Jerry, we sent Bob. They can't find it. What the fuck?
Yeah, it is a funny image just to see them like walking around for like days on end. They're like, we can't find it. Bethod.
And then Bethod's gonna be like, are you? Did I hire idiots? Did I hire idiots? They're just getting the bloody cross cutting them. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And then he although Baez is a little concerned, because he basically says that Kara, for all her tattoos and bluster, she's not a joke. She has long eye, and the long eye. He doesn't exactly say what it does, but I kind of want to save the long eye discussion for whenever we encounter another character. But
I think the trick is in the name, isn't it?
Yeah, it's almost self-explanatory, but it's interesting.
The long eye is to a certain degree, obviously it's connected to the other side because all magic comes from there. But he basically says, well, with the long eye, she's able to know exactly where we are and where we're going. And Logan's like, dude, what the hell? He's like, that's not good. And
you mentioned this before we left.
Right. No, yeah, exactly. He kind of explains it here. He's like, she knows when we left, more than likely, and in what direction we were heading. So what that means is, this is kind of like what a seer is, right? Can see into the future of the past.
What the hell, Malachus?
Yeah, Malachus, you fucking slacking here, bro.
Jesus Christ. Say he's not a very good one.
Yeah. You know what? I felt bad for Malachus. Now, I think I'm on bias's side. I think I'm on his side a little bit. Like,
So, the long eye apparently, it can do a couple different things, but it's I do like how Baez, up to this point, he seemed pretty confident. Even in his horse right now, he seems confident. But then when he mentions the long eye, he's like, actually, it's not a joke. It's a real thing. He's like, we shouldn't actually mess around with that.
And he's asking Logan, hey, so like, let's just say, Bethard and his men catch up to us. Let's just say, what do you have in mind? What do you have planned? And Logan's like, I don't fucking know.
Logan's like, better fucking run fast, I guess.
It's like, I hope our horses are quick.
Yeah.
And then, what else? Oh, this part. Can I talk about this real quick?
Yeah, man, go for it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we transition to, we do like a little break that I've noticed that's happened the last couple of chapters. They're around the campfire. They're hanging out, eating their dinner, drinking their water. Baez is basically doing to Malachus Kwai the equivalent of flashcards. He's taking plants and quizzing Kwai on their names and their uses. And Kwai is utter shit at all of them.
Yeah, he's terrible.
You like that callback, George?
Utter shit, yes.
Utter shit.
He can't get any of these right.
He can't get any of these right.
I know there are a lot of plants, but I did plant identification in uni. It's not that fucking old.
Yeah, again, that's what I'm saying, guys. When we talked about Malachus at a character spot, I don't really feel bad for him that much. The only reason when you first read it, you feel bad is because you already feel so connected to Logan as a character that whenever Logan feels bad, you're like, oh, that does kind of suck.
And obviously, Malachus is probably the second smartest person that he's ever met, like in academia wise. So he's not really
and there's a big gulf between the first and the second.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. He's probably the third. Bethard is pretty smart.
No, yeah,
true.
True.
We didn't ever hear about him reading books, do we?
Actually, we.
No, yes, he does.
I don't even. Say, this is. I can say this isn't really spoilery, honestly. But Bethard has been around. I'm gonna exclude this one. But Bethard has been around. Bethard spent time studying and stuff. He's read books from across the world. He spent a lot of time reading. That's kind of that's the thing that has made him the edge, is that he's much more educated than a lot of pretty much everybody else in the North.
I would love an autobiography written by Joe about Bethard. I would love it.
That would be a great format for a book there.
Let's get a hashtag, Justice for Bethard. How about that?
There you go, Joe. There's our
justice. What do you mean, justice? What do you mean, justice, Jeff?
You know damn well what I mean, Harrison.
There's no justice here.
Justice don't exist here. So the point. Sorry about the tangent, but the point is, I I don't know what it is, but I just love when characters just shit on other characters. I just love it. Just love it. Kwai just sits there and takes it because like he knows he could be better, but he just isn't.
Mm.
He sucks so
Like,
much.
imagine he's relying at some point. He relies on a 9-fingered illiterate Northman to help him name plants and their uses. And he's been studying. He came from the old empire, came from another Magus. I'm tired of how to pronounce these goddamn names, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, the dude is, in his early 20s.
Yeah.
Like, come on, you little shit.
Come on, stupid.
So it's like funny on the first read through, you're like, oh, poor Malicus. Oh, Bios is kind of a hard guy. And by the time you get to the third read through, you're like, yeah, fuck Malicus, little shithead.
Get it together. Get it together.
I mean,
yeah, being nice doesn't carry you through the world.
What were you saying, George?
Can you imagine being given this opportunity? Like, nobody else in the world gets the opportunity to become a fucking wizard.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's shit in the bed. He's shit in the bed.
Yeah. He just doesn't even know fucking plants. Jesus.
He just got nothing, has he?
No.
He's bad at being a seer. He can't find his own way in the world. He can't take care of himself. He doesn't know plants. He doesn't know the only thing he knows is the fucking high art, like a standard principle in the first and second law. That's it.
It's got the first and the second law. And
you mean that he knows how to recite the first and second law?
Yeah, he doesn't even know what action means.
Yeah, he basically knows how to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and that's it.
That's funny. So
fucking Kwai. You know what? You're right, man. Fuck Kwai.
Hashtag fuck Kwai.
Hashtag
no,
fuck
wait,
Kwai.
No, that doesn't actually doesn't.
Zacharias could find.
What was that? You guys?
Is this the best guy that Zacharias could find? Seriously.
I'm telling you, man. I guarantee you, it was like a pity thing. I guarantee it was a pity thing.
Dude, I don't know if it's that. I think it was more like scraping the bottom of the barrel. He's just like, he says he could see the future. Bye, ass, take him. Okay.
And we get here in this chapter a little more exposition on the Magi and the magic, because Baez says that high art and magic comes from somewhere else, and you can temper it with knowledge. And so in order to learn how to do magic, you literally have to learn about everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then he says that
obviously
ahead,
he says with enough knowledge the Magi could do anything. He says, well, no, obviously not, you can't. There are limits to the rules, and we'll find out about that later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's I really like this point, because sometimes people will mention how the first law of magic is kind of, it doesn't have rules, and it comes out and does things whenever it's convenient, and I completely disagree with that.
Yeah,
I like it, but I don't even think it's that accurate, because right here we get a hard rule system for how it works, at least for the Magi. Malicus directly says what it does. Like you said, George, you pull from the other side, but because it's so violent and dangerous, you have to temper it with knowledge from our world. So the more knowledge you have, the more effective your magic is. But since magic is leaking from the world, it also means that their magic is, more limited at the moment.
It's neutered.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's perfect term. It's more neutered. But despite that, he's more knowledgeable, which means his magic's more effective than what it used to be. And I really like how that works there with that. Is that all magic comes from the other side, but Magi have the kind of the up and up on it, because they know how to use the knowledge of our world to make that magic effective rather than it just being raw.
Harrison with the red pill. I like that. Okay. I'm just gonna admit, a little confused because I am not so familiar with the magic systems of fantasy. But Harrison, how you explained it, it was great. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah. And
I
then
like
he
how
also
Joe
go
doesn't
ahead,
sort
George.
of he doesn't linger on the details. Baez probably could exposit forever on how you can't do this particular thing or you can't do that particular thing, but in the end, it doesn't really matter because it is sort of just a plot device.
Right. It just moves it forward. Right.
Yeah, it has its purpose, and I think that's why a lot of people miss it. Is that right here? They read this and like, okay, and they're expecting more, and then there's not.
Right.
So,
Yeah, at this point, Baez is like, yeah, so we kind of like just specialize, save time. And then,
well,
of course,
it's
go ahead.
I was just gonna say they like George was saying they can't learn everything, and so because of that, they need to specialize in order to use their magic effectively. It's better to specialize.
To maximize their effectiveness. I got you.
I find it interesting that how Baez says that he specializes in fire, which means that they must have a pretty accurate grasp of what fire is. I mean, at this point, if you're talking about like early Renaissance, they were still just like, I don't know, it's like fucking magic or something,
Right.
You make things hot and this stuff appears, and they didn't
Right.
really know anything more about it than that. So they must have a pretty good grasp of some kind of physics there, which I find quite interesting.
Yeah, well, the principles of art, right? All those big books there. I think that has a lot of knowledge about how the world actually works because high art isn't about magic from the other side, it's about knowledge of our world. That way you can temper the magic from the other side.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
I imagine those massive amount of volumes are all about science and shit.
Yeah, it makes sense because Logan asked him, he's like, with all that knowledge, you magi can do anything. And then he says, yeah, there are limits. But he doesn't outright say no.
You're right. Have you guys always wondered? I have my I think I know exactly what it is, but he says fire, force, and will. Obviously,
Yeah, I
fire
saw
is
that.
self-explanatory.
Right.
Force, we see him do that many times
With
in
the
the
force,
future.
with the force choke.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's already
things
done his
like
little
that.
force choke.
Yeah.
But
Baez, at this point, Baez is the positive Darth Vader.
and then he has and then his last one is will, which is interesting. But it actually makes sense because there's many times when characters know that his voice is way louder than what they think is possible. They have to mention how they feel uneasy whenever he starts to use certain magic. He's very intimidating. He's hard to speak to sometimes. All those little things like that. I think that is his will. That's the magic of will.
Or
Now,
even
I think
that
it has
he's
something to
sapping
do.
the will of people around him.
Yeah, I think it has to do with biology, like on the science side of things. I think it has to do with biology, which is why he says, just a trick of flesh. That I think that has to do with the will. But I just thought that was interesting because force and fire are pretty self-explanatory, but will is a bit more subtle. And anytime Bias does something that you're like, that's kind of weird. That's oddly specific. I think that's will.
And that's interesting because I think, and now that you mentioned it, right, the will side of it, it could be a secondary effect because it occurs when all right, so when say Baez is force choking Calder or Karib, Logan is telling us, the reader, that he feels the need to kneel, to kowtow, not in layman's terms. What if will, because like once you get forced,
like an amplifier.
you can force anyone to do what you want, right? Like by choking the air out of them, but the will part, I feel like that's a secondary, like a. God damn it! I do not know enough magic.
I know what you mean. It's kind of more
what I mean.
amplimentary effect. It kind of comes with it. It makes his magic better because whenever he's force choking somebody, everybody else is afraid to do anything because he's also including his will.
Right.
Yeah.
It seems like it's almost a Fenris the Feared effect that we saw in the Lord's Round.
Absolutely.
Or Open Council or whatever.
Yes. What were you saying, George?
I think that might be sort of we might be reading a little bit too far into this, but I think
Fuck it.
because obviously we know that magic is it's raw and untempered, so maybe the like you said, it might be a secondary effect, and also the way that people describe that when we'll see later in this chapter when he explodes those men and sets the whole forest on fire, that Logan feels a tugging in his guts.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe those things are just a side effect of the magic that he's intending to do, Baez is intending to do, sort of leaking and other effects happening because he doesn't know enough in order to stop that from happening. He can't be that precise.
That's a good point. Oh, that's a really good point, George. I did not think about it in that aspect there. That's
really good. I honestly thought it was because Baez was rusty.
No. Maybe because
I will say that whenever we encounter other beings who have magic, their abilities, they all kind of have a thing that doesn't take much effort. We see in this chapter here in a bit, Baez is a little bit tired from exploding those men and those trees and stuff. And many times we don't see other people get tired. But Baez also does things that don't make him tired. So I think you're kind of right, George. He's pulling more than he should, and the knowledge isn't enough to temper it because, like you said, he doesn't know enough, but he doesn't care. So.
That's a great setup here. I mean, it's not even explicitly spoken.
Yes, I love that part.
To let you know that, Baez isn't invulnerable, but he is very powerful.
Yes, very, very.
Well, hold on, Harrison. You said that he wasn't really affected by that. I'm looking at the page. I'm looking at the page right now.
I'm talking about in other moments. There's other times.
Other moments. I apologize.
Magic.
Sorry.
Like when he's force choking Calder, he's not really bothered by that.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
Because he's used probably because what George said is he's using the proper amount that he has available. Or in another level, it's harder to pull from the other side at this point because magic is leaked from the world so much that it takes so much more effort to do, and he hates that he's limited by that. So he just doesn't care. He'll just pull more.
That's the idea, right? Okay.
And I like how we get to the line that as we get to the end of this segment that is, knowledge may be the root of power, but each new thing that I've learned has left me worse off.
That's a really good.
And I know a few people who can really relate to that.
Okay, so you were talking about the knowledge root of all power. That's what Logan was saying. Is that what you're saying, George?
Oh no, that's what Logan said.
Right. It's okay. And that's what I wanted to point out was on one of my notes was that part where Logan doesn't. It's what I mentioned, I think, in the first episode or second episode when I said Logan's how fast he decided to look for the magi that was looking for him, which turns out to be Baez. He doesn't want to know anything, and that surprises Baez. It surprised me the first time I read it. Like, who doesn't want to know what they're doing, why they're doing, and especially if someone is requesting them to accompany them on a trip. Like if someone says, "Hey, come with me real quick," you're gonna ask, "Oh, why? What are we doing?" And in this kind of setting, when you're traveling, when every little thing can mean life or death, you want to know why. And Logan just doesn't seem to care.
I definitely get where you're coming from, and I think this might just be a little glimpse into his character that, if you don't know what you're doing and why, you can sort of shirk responsibility for your actions.
Oh, I like that.
I completely agree with George. Is that anytime he knows that whenever he takes an action, there are consequences, and he has to deal with those consequences. And he literally says, "I'm tired of making my own decisions," because he's tired of dealing with the consequences. So he is. He doesn't literally say, "I'm tired of dealing with the consequences," but that's kind of alluded to. If you don't want to make your own decisions and you don't want to deal with the repercussions, it's because you're, you don't want to deal with it.
So, yeah, but son of a bitch. Oh, we can't reference this yet, but that ain't right. That's not true, Logan.
Yeah. And I like, too, because here he says those things, and you're right, it's kind of weird, right? But we kind of blow it off again because Logan is so likable. We're just like, oh, whatever.
Right.
But
You know what I think it is?
odd.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. That was it.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, you know what I think helps the reader move past it is how Baez, who's the elder wizard, after Logan goes on that little tangent about not wanting to know, that Baez is surprised by what he says. The first time that Logan's ever seen him surprised, and doesn't really talk until Malachus is like, "Well, I'd like to know what we're doing," and then Baez is like, "You shut the fuck up."
Even more
You know?
contempt for
So,
Malchus.
so I think it's supposed to imprint upon the reader that, oh, what Logan just said is profound. It's
Yeah.
you know, he's letting go of the desire to seek meaning in existence in his world, etc., etc. When in reality, later on, we know where this comes from. We know,
Yeah.
Mr. Nine Fingers. We know.
Yeah, and that's a good point. In fact, that's exactly what I thought the first time I read it. Now I was like, oh, he's just, letting go of it. Didn't think much of it.
Okay. And then we move on. After, Baez sends Malachus to clean the pots and doesn't give him any tea. We we move to the fact where the point where it all goes wrong for them. They're traveling, it's midday. And then, lo and behold, Mr. Bethod has sent his people after Logan and Baez, and Bethod keeps his word. So, yeah, we have a man here who wants to introduce this man.
And I love this first description as well. He sat on his horse like a bag of turnips.
Can you repeat all that, George? Because you kind of like cut in and out.
Sorry, is that better?
That's better. Yeah, go ahead.
Said I really like this introduction to Black Toe, which is their leader sat on his horse like a bag of turnips, which is just it's just a fantastic a metaphor there. Metaphor for, I'm sure we've all seen, when you sit and you just slouch and you're just tired and sick of the day. That is exactly how you sit, just like a bag of potatoes or turnips.
You're right, George. This one always catches me. I'm always like, that's a perfect description.
That's great.
And we get him call Logan a name that he only gets called once, which is the Bryn.
Yeah.
Which I think might be his original name before he came over the mountains.
Oh.
Because there is a lot of in the north, especially, we'll find out later, we get different cultures. And I think this might be sort of a reference to the Welsh, because Bryn in Welsh means hill.
Hang on, guys. I don't know how I've missed this. I've read this so many times.
Wait. My mind is blown on so many levels right now. Hold on. A, George, you know Welsh. B, Harrison, you're lacking. C, this really is the only time that the Bryn is mentioned in all the books. You're right. I'm trying to think of it. Wait. I don't even know why I'm pretending to count my head. It's not like I'm going to remember. Yeah, as far as I know, this is the only time the Bryn is mentioned. Holy fucking shit.
But that's so it might just sort of be a remnant of an earlier age. We don't know how many people that we meet later, especially the Northmen, have been around as long as this guy has, because he seems to know him from way back.
It's got to be a decent amount. If we know that the Dogman came over the mountains with Logan to seek Beth out for help against the Shanka. And Black Toe isn't that old, is he?
I don't know. I don't think we ever really get a description of his age.
I would assume Black Toe, judging by how he speaks compared to the other Northmen. Joe's pretty good at talking, especially with the Northmen, showing how they speak and what their priorities are with their age. I would say he's around 3 Teresa's age, probably in his early 50s, late 40s.
Makes sense. Okay.
I'm looking up Bryn right now because
that's really good, George. Good on that.
Hill. Yeah, you're right. The hill thing. So the Bryn. You're right. Maybe that was maybe it was Logan Bryn because he came from a different place. Who knows?
Logan Bryn. Do we like Logan Bryn?
Or
Joe just left it in and forgot to take it out.
Right. Right. But remember, this is the North, and if I'm not mistaken, the North here is modeled after either the Scottish Highlanders or Scandinavian barbarians, right? Vikings. Wouldn't it be more like Logan of the Bryn?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Or maybe
that's
it's
a good point.
description.
Bam!
Yeah, that's a good point, Jeff. So the North, the wars and stuff. The wars have been around for the past 10, 15 years since Bethod started doing his thing. And before that, though, it seemed that everywhere was broken up into clans. You didn't have a last name. You only had the name. If you got a name, you became a named man, and so you became, for example, Logan's name. He didn't get 9 fingers until he lost that finger. He
Right.
didn't have a last name. So the Bryn was probably kind of, maybe that was the region, like you said, of Bryn. Maybe that was the region he came from, north of the high places. And on the coastline there, maybe that was called the Bryn up there, and maybe Blacktoe knows that because he's known him for a long time.
Yeah. I just
I
realized
never
something.
caught that, George. What the hell?
Good job,
You're
George.
very welcome.
You know, if you think about it, Logan is the only guy. No, wait. Besides, okay, Logan's the only guy. Just by this passage alone, is the only guy to have 3 different given names. 9 fingers, the Bryn, and the Bloody 9.
Mhm.
Yeah. As it.
Right.
Go ahead.
And
Okay,
we did find out later that names can change. I mean, certain Northmen that we won't name
Yes,
do have their names change over time.
I know what you mean. Well, like I'm just talking about like in terms of the like we know that by this time do we know by this time what we call 3 trees or not yet? Is that later on? Like his name. You know what I mean?
We do know we've heard 3 trees, but we do know that we can talk
the-
about his name is Rudd.
We could just say, right? He's the Rock of Ulfrith.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
what-
like that.
that-
He also has 3 kind of things. So that's a good point.
I just know that it's Rudd 3 trees, the Rock of Ulfrith.
Yeah.
My Jersey
And
accent.
maybe it
can't do
is Logan 9 Fingers, the Bryn, and we just never hear that because everyone's just well, how
Holy
people
shit.
treat
You blew
Logan
my
later
mind.
on.
You blew my mind.
It's how they treat him. In the future, it's just not important at that point anymore. Whereas with Rudd 3 trees, it was like, wow, that's him, the Rock of Uthrith. Logan doesn't have quite the same reputation. That's not what's important. Him being the brand, it's not important anymore. So they just say, fuck it.
Yeah. The Bryn doesn't matter at this point. It's that's the Bloody 9. Let's shit our pants.
So, anyways,
George, are you there?
Good discussion.
Speaking of names, we get on to Blacktoe, who, and I like this. This is a really interesting and a sort of very realistic backstory for this character because he's lost his toes to frostbite, which among soldiers, especially pre-industrial times, this would have been a very common thing. I mean, boots, rawhide boots, don't last that long, especially if they're wet.
Right.
So they rot, and of course, if you're up in the snow, in the high places, in the mountains, or whatever, you're going to end up with people getting frostbite. So this is a good sort of a name for him and a very realistic backstory. I like it.
Yeah, it was like the first time that whenever I was reading the books, I'm like, oh, that's a good little character note right there. Like most of the time, it'd just be like, oh, that he was some captain person or whatever. He has a little bit of character right off the bat.
And of course, Blacktoe is our character spot for the day, so I'm good.
He is our character spot. So let's just dive into it real quick because this chapter is a long one anyway. So let's dive into the character spot.
Yeah, so we have this Blacktoe, and he has this fantastic backstory. So, and a result of that is that he has to constantly be on horseback because I don't know if you've tried walking without toes. You only ever get the opportunity once, but
try it on a weekend, when you're out and about with your significant other.
Yeah, exactly. It's very difficult. So he can't fight on foot. So the first thing Logan does is knock him out of his fucking horse, which makes sense.
Yeah, Blacktoe is he's a bit solemn. he's kind of he's an older guy. And he's kind of done. He knows what Logan. He knows who Logan is and everything. He knows what Logan's capable of, and he still is like, "Come on, can you just cooperate, please?"
Right. Yeah, he's aware of what Logan can do.
And I think it's kind of sad that he is just so resolute. You know, he's just so accepted. He's accepted his position now.
Oh, 100%. And he's obviously a very, quite a tragic character, to be honest, because we learned that he didn't want to fight for Bethord. He fought against Bethord while Logan was fighting for Bethord. And now that the situation is reversed, he still respects Logan.
Yes.
And he just doesn't, he's tired of fighting, but he has to go and do this thing because, like he says, you got to do a thing if your chief tells you to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he and it's like you said, and to play into what you said, George, it's tragic because at the end here, whenever he's dying, he also says, I should have died fighting. That would have been honorable. And he just basically, you can tell he just regrets all of his past decisions in the recent years, and that is tragic because he is kind of a nice guy.
Yeah, absolutely. He's perfectly honourable. He doesn't just offers a complete. Well, they're going to die if they get taken, but he says, come carefully and we'll treat you fair and all that, and you can go honourably. Whereas, they had the jump on them, so he could have just shot them to death there.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, the fact that he apologizes for the fact that he's the one that has to bring Logan in, it speaks a lot to his character.
That is good. Rip Blacktoe. You missed. I'm going to make a little YouTube video with a little in memoriam for Blacktoe.
Yeah. This is also like, I think this is our first character spot, honestly, that we're like, this character is actually like, this is a good little character right here. This is the kind of character spot that we want to show more often. Somebody who is a side character who shows up a couple times. Maybe they die, maybe they don't. And there's a couple characters we've been holding off on because we want to save them for their moment. But still, this is the kinds of characters that we like to point out. The ones that are written not intensely, but written really well.
Absolutely. That's a fantastic point, Harrison.
Right. Like not written in jest, or at least not us spotlighting them in jest, but Blacktoe was a good one. He's a good one.
It's
like it kind of also plays in the fact that this is in keeping with the chapter, right? That the good people, the nice people, tend not to do so well.
Yeah. I think this alludes to
real life.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah. But that's what I mean. It alludes to Harrison's earlier point in the earlier episodes when he says, "This is not your grandpa's regular fantasy."
Well, it was George who said that.
George said that. Sorry.
Exactly. I mean, at this point, we really could have just had a generic bad guy. Oh, this guy's like Bethod's most loyal lieutenant. He's like the bad guy, and he does all this bad shit. And it's not. It's just this regular guy, and he's got no toes. And he's just really sad about the situation.
Yeah.
He has to ride a horse to go to the bathroom and to the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly. He probably lives on that horse.
I bet he felt bad for the horse too. I think the only thing that he could have made it better is if he like leaned over to the horse and he was like, "I'm sorry, old boy." That would have been heartbreaking. So they
from the character spot.
Yeah. They surround him. He asks him to surrender, like everything we talked about. Logan is is like, nope. And he fights him, knocks Blacktoe off his horse, goes sprinting down the road with Malachus and Baez, and then they get trapped because they had already planned on them trying to escape, or Blacktoe had. So there's a tree in their way along with some more soldiers. And then they get surrounded again.
And we get the first big show of Baez being an absolute badass. And I love that description here. There's obviously the very good hint to other fantasies that there wasn't an incantation, no word of magic or anything like that. It just they just exploded.
Honestly, that's the most terrifying part about the high art, is the fact that it could just happen.
Exactly. It's just so destructive, and we get a little bit of a hint, and Logan says that you can see the air shimmering around Baez's shoulders, which obviously is another sort of thing of Baez not really being able to fully control his abilities.
I think
You could think that he was just trying to kill the men. There's no reason to make all those trees explode if you could just make these guys explode anyway.
But that they were hiding. A lot of them were hiding by the trees, the archers, and I think he exploded the trees to kind of.
he actually didn't explode them in, yeah, because he even says to Malicus afterwards, "See what a good knowledge of plants can do."
Oh right,
Yeah.
Just cut that out.
Plus, we do also see other characters, their shoulders shimmer whenever they start using high art. But yeah, I think you're still right, George, to a certain degree. Is that Baez is not quite as precise as he pretends to be.
And do we get a little line about Baez seeming affected by his display here?
Yeah.
Yes.
We do. Yeah, we do. We after Georgie there.
Yeah.
Okay. So Baez combusts all the trees around and takes out the archers, other spearmen. Blacktail goes down. We see that Baez, he sounds calm, but his hands are trembling, like really bad, and that he looks like an old man who dragged a cart 10 miles. And he was swaying silently back and forth, right? Or no, Logan was. I'm sorry, but Baez just isn't looking good.
And this is sort of a tie-in again. Like I say, most magic systems have this sort of caveat that magic and performing, especially like large acts of magic, has a cost, and it's usually a physical cost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does say also that when Logan asks him, like, so that's art, is it? Baez says, like, of a sort. It's not very subtle.
And I like how he says subtlety is wasted on the Northman after just having described Logan, a Northman, as being as a subtle character.
Exactly.
Well, that's exactly why he likes him, though, right? It's because he's a subtle Northman, and he's like, I did not expect that.
Very true. Very true.
Right. And then we move on to when Logan realizes that Blacktail's still alive and walks over to him, but Blacktail is trapped under his horse, who's dead. And
I like the look of profound puzzlement, not fear or because you've just been knocked off your horse by an explosion. You've probably never seen an explosion before if you're living in a pre-industrial society.
Yeah. His toes are already, they're gone. His feet are fucked. His legs are crushed, and now his hands are just burnt to
Oof, that is rough.
shite. Yeah.
Doesn't deserve this.
No.
Rebut too.
The most tragic character of the first law. I mean,
actually, he is the most tragic character in the first part of the first law.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. Yeah. He says he's like, you fucking killed me. Like, even if he does make it back, what could he do? Like, what would he be good for?
I mean, he knows he's fucked to this point, and he just asks Logan to, put him out of his misery.
Mm-hmm. And then Logan looks at Baez. He's just looking at him like, maybe you can do something. And Baez's like, I don't heal.
I'm not good for healing.
Yeah, I'm not.
Also, Baez probably wouldn't anyways.
And I like that. You've been alive for however many hundreds of thousands of years, and you just didn't bother to learn healing, even though it's probably the most useful thing you could do.
You would think.
To his character a little bit. Yeah. And I really like. So he basically Blacktoe's like, I'm glad it was you, and Logan's like, I'm not, and kills him.
Which is a good repetition. I love this sort of thing that Joe does. He does, he says something at the beginning of a chapter or segment or book or poll or whatever, and then he say the same thing at the end, but it's slightly different. At the beginning he says, I'm sad that it was me that has to come and get you. And Logan's like, yeah, so am I. I'm sad that it's you. And then at the end it's like, well, I'm glad it's you. Well, I'm fucking not.
Yeah.
That's a good point, George. I like it's really subtle little things that he does.
Mm-hmm.
And not to take away from George's thing that he always says, but I think it's really, really good how this chapter ends. And it's the ending of the part too. But Logan looks at his hands and he's like, nothing's changed. I'm basically everything's still the same. And Baez is like, nothing ever does.
Mm.
And
And I love the very end of this chapter, which is just he's been handed the blade itself, and he just looks at it and he doesn't want it, but he took it anyway.
Yes,
Yeah.
I totally agree. The ending, the first time you read this, you're like, interesting. And then after reading it multiple times, you're like, that's just such a good writing right there on the kind of person that Logan is.
Yeah. He's always about number one, which is himself.
Absolutely,
He's
Jeff.
not going to refuse a sword just because he's having an existential crisis.
You know what I mean? An existential crisis like every other day. So
yeah, right. Exactly. All right. So, what do you guys rate that chapter? George, do you want to give us your score?
It's been a good episode for good ratings for me. I'm gonna have to give this one an 8 and a knuckle as well.
8 and a knuckle, man. You were on fire, George. Good lord.
I mean, I just love, we get Malicus's incompetence, we get Logan's competence, and we get Baez being an absolute bastard and just blowing a ton of guys up. And he only does it after Logan's fought to death. Which I love. Which I just absolutely love.
Okay.
Jeff?
I'm giving this an 8 out of 9. I like the showing that Logan isn't just your average dumb brute of a Northman by understanding how ground, choosing the place of battle, the location of battle, greatly amplifies one's chances for success. Shows that Logan is a lot more intelligent than he lets on. I like that. I like that Logan tries to help out Quai in naming plants. Quai needs to get a Farmer's Digest book or something. I like that Logan's such a complicated character that I can't really get into right now because we're still so early into the book. But the action sequence is good. It seems to be, again, well written, doesn't span too many pages, doesn't drag out. There's more pages on, you could say, Black Toe and Logan's regret at their current places in life than there is in terms of the violence that's occurring, which is I really appreciate, because for a person, for someone that likes violence as much as I do, it can be how do I say this, over the top, very Quentin Tarantino-esque. You know what I mean? So I feel like that this was very well done. 8 out of 9 for me.
Good point. Good point. How about you, Harrison?
Well, just as to piggyback off of Jeff's earlier thing where he's like, I have two notes to point out about the chapter. I didn't want to derail our good conversation, but Blacktoe does point out that Fenris was dug up by Karib, supposedly from some kind of hill, and I think that's very interesting. That's the rumor going around, is that he was dug up somewhere. Imagine that, you're just digging a hole and you're like, oh, there's a 8-foot tall Northman.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hold on, Harrison. I need to say something here. What if 9 Fingers is a Bryn, which means hill, and Fenris was dug up from a hill? What if before Fenris was dug up, some of his Fenrisiness was passed on to Logan at birth?
You're losing me.
Okay. You know what I mean. You know what I mean.
Or
Come
maybe
on, you know what I mean.
Fenris oh no, that doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't make any sense. Harrison, I like how you let me go on.
I'm all in it, man. I like on tangents. I love him, man.
Sorry, continue.
You're good. My only other note was I also mentioned Blacktoe mentioned how after Logan's like, even Old Man Yoel's done fighting, and Blacktoe's like, yeah, he's done. He's like, the only people who are still against Bethel are some hillmen under the leadership of Crummicky Fail, which is a character we will see again.
Oh, I love Crummicky Fail.
Yeah, so I just like those little lore tidbits that we're throwing in there in exposition. This chapter for me is actually a 9 out of 9 for me.
Oh shit!
I love this chapter. Every single time I could read this is one of those chapters I could read over and over again. It progresses the characters a lot. You have a really good little side character. You have good action. You have a lot of lore stuff that is not shoved down your throat. It's very natural. You have a lot of, like you said, the Malachus stuff. Logan's a complex character. It's a perfect ending, in my mind, to part 1. It's for the entire series. The whole time we kind of have these intentions, and right here we have this really subtle nod to point out that, Logan's like, I don't really want to do this, and he does it anyways. That whole section, how it ends. It also is we're thinking Bias is like a wizard. We don't really see him do much. We see him do some, messing with people's throats and things like that. But then we see him blow people up, and you're like, whoa, this is a little bit different, And there's just so many layers to this chapter. I just really, it's one of
Harrison. What, man? That's 100% score right there, bro.
Yeah, I think it's one of his best written chapters, especially for the Blade itself. I think it's definitely one of his best chapters.
Oh, for sure, I can see that.
I agree. I think with this last episode, especially with the last 3 characters, chapters, even we get one of the. Let me just start that again. In this last little bit of the last section of the first section of the first book. Yeah, that's right. So we get a POV character chapter for each character that we've met so far, at least in the point of view, except Dogman, but who cares about the Dogman? And West, who cares about West?
Whoa. That's
okay, let's argue that
will not stand for
main
Let George.
Sorry.
What are you trying to say, George? Jesus.
And I think we have 3, except for Glocta's, but Giselle's and Logan's. We really have the conclusion of their first arcs here. Got Logan really wanting to stay away from violence and trying to be a better man, realizing, like you said, Harrison, that nothing's changed. And Giselle realizing for the first time in his life, probably, that he is just really spoiled and a bastard. And actually, aiming to do better, even if his motivations are spiteful.
Yeah.
That's really getting set up for what's to come. And I'm very excited about this journey that we're undertaking.
That's great, George. That's perfect. I think that's exactly a perfect summarization of the past couple chapters.
No, for sure. And part 2 is only going to get crazier from here on out. That's our show, everyone. We want to thank you all for listening and supporting this podcast. This is a passion project for the 3 of us, and your support really does mean a lot to us.
And if you're interested, follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and Reddit, of course. We're active on House of the Meme Maker and the First Law subreddits. And keep sending us your messages, because all of this interaction has just been absolutely fantastic. And please send us your questions for our question of the week next week. Email us at circleoftheworldpodcast@gmail.com.
And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any podcast app that you listen to podcasts on. And please rate and review this podcast, as it helps to spread our reach. Thank you all again for listening.
Nothing's changed.